And then there's two guys that both dominated today. And I want your thoughts on these two guys. It's James Pearce from Tennessee,
Yeah.
and it's our good friend Shamar Stewart from A&M, and I'm a big A&M fan.
The bull rush.
So Pearce ran the fastest 40 of any of the defensive linemen today, 4.47. He ran on his first crack, he ran 4.50 with a 1.58 10-yard split. Second try, 4.47, 1.56 on the 10-yard split. He hit 23 miles per hour. He's been a blue chip guy. He was one of the best players in the country coming into the year. Right. For sure. He's a blue chip guy, super blue chipper. He's 6'5", he's 245, he's really linear. He's like, that's his natural weight. Like, this guy's got a frame that could easily put on 15, 20 pounds in the next 5 years. Yeah. He's just lean, mean, and fast.
He's lean.
He's a real athlete. I mean, this is one of the real athletes. This guy can get parallel to the ground, and he's still got balance. I mean,
crazy bend, crazy length.
He has short arms. 32 3/4 arm length is not, suboptimal, let's just say. And his high jump result was 31 inches. That raised eyebrows because a lot of people thought he's a great athlete. He might jump 38 inches, 39. No, 31. So you wonder about lower body explosion.
Which you watched the tape and you would have guessed it, by the way.
Yeah, well, he's not. Yeah, I mean, this is a speed rusher. 19.5 sacks in 3 seasons, 17.5 over the past 2. So we'll see. We'll see. That's one. And then Shamar Stewart from A&M, who Shamar Stewart was a blue chipper, 5-star, big time talent. Real big time talent. 6'5". He played at 285 this year. Mm-hmm. He slimmed down to 267 for this. They weighed him at the Senior Bowl at 281, so he was kind of working his way down. Yeah. He was bigger, early in the year, but he's obviously sold out for the workouts. But he's got 40-inch vertical. I mean, he's a crazy athlete. We knew he was going to run sub 4.6, and he did 4.59. I mean, yeah. And he doesn't have a lot of moves. But if you watch
Larry, that is a dramatic overstatement. He has one move and no other moves.
Like, he doesn't even have that. He doesn't even have a move.
Runs straight into your flipping face. That's all he does. And at 280, it's high pretty energy. Awesome. It's a pretty awesome move.
He's fast. He's big and fast. I mean, and
he's the biggest, strongest, meanest dude, but there's no craft to his game at all.
But he led them in pressures this year, and it was a damn good line. I mean, you had Scorton on the other side. You had Shamar
Did he lead
Turner.
him in pressures because he was consistently in one-on-ones against guys who were basically the same weight as him, and he's more athletic, and he just bull rushed him over? Because I watched Will Campbell work him.
He's got a great motor. He just keeps coming. People were going to be down on him because of the sacks and be like, oh, he's not a productive guy. But all I would say is sacks do beget sacks. So it's like it is a knack. So you'd like to see more sacks for sure. And if you like guys at the college level who get sacks and think it's going to translate, it generally does unless they have physical limitations. And then as far as guys who don't get sacks, it typically does they still are successful in the NFL if they're a certain level athlete.
Of course.
And like the guy that I would compare this guy to, reminds me of the guy who's used to go by Jason and now goes by Odafe Owe, who played at Penn State.
Okay.
He didn't have collegiate sack production. I mean, he didn't. He had like 7 sacks or something like that in 3 years combined. And he had 10 this year. So, I mean, it's just like, I know, this guy didn't sack the quarterback. Why is Owe so good now? Because he's a freaky athlete who's big, strong, and fast. It's a technique-rich position, so he has to be coached up. It's like a gem that needs to be polished. And once you polish it up, man, you really got something. So I personally think that I see Odafe Owe or Jason Owe, whatever addition, the Penn State kid who's with the Ravens now. Mm-hmm. He's a really, really good, impactful speed rusher on a really good defense. And I just think that that's what this guy's going to be. I know
Well,
I don't think
he's never going to be a speed rusher. He's
really fast. I mean, I think he could be.
It doesn't translate in the game. I mean, you can't be fast if you run straight into people as your profession. And so you're just teaching him an entirely
led them
new
in
skill.
Pressures.
Yeah,
I'm not them in pressures.
You and I both watched a lot of A&M.
You're thinking of him as as an edge. What I'm thinking of him as a guy that he's all over the formation. Like he's an interior rusher on certain downs. So he's a pass rusher. I'll say this. I understand the people that don't like him, but I think in an NFL world where almost like none of the guys in your defensive line can afford to not be pass rushers, like everybody's got to rush the passer. Right. I like this player because he's a big-bodied player that can play downs inside and outside, and his physical profile is second to none. I mean, he's really big time.
Why wouldn't you just take Nick Scourton then?
I watched the games. Nick Scourton, I like a lot. I really do like a lot. He's not nearly as dynamic as this guy. This guy has the same profile as Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's 6'4.5". This guy's 6'5".
Then why didn't
Myles Garrett weighed
272?
This guy weighed 267.
I can appreciate
4'6", 4'5'9", 41-inch vertical.
That's great. I watched Myles Garrett in college, and I watched Shamar. I mean, I watched these guys in college. Like it's not even remotely close. Myles Garrett was the number 1 overall pick in the draft for a reason, because he was a dominant force at the same flipping school. And it's like this guy, I would argue, is the 3rd best defensive lineman on his own team, albeit an elite defensive line. But like
I'll bet you right now, we'll make a gentleman's bet.
Okay.
If you, maybe you just threw out Scourton because Scourton's on the line. But
I love Scourton. I
think Scourton is a safe, solid single to left. I think you don't win Super Bowls with him. I think Stewart is potentially the best defensive lineman on your team, and a really a really talented guy. I mean, this guy, he's really talented. I'll just say this. I would defer to Chris. Like if Chris watched him and said, "Hey, Krug, I don't think he's got it," I would be like, "Fine, maybe he doesn't have it."
Yeah, I mean,
but if Chris really thinks that this guy, he could coach this guy, I think this guy needs Chris. You know what I mean? I think if you put this guy with the Kaseric, I think in 2 years, the way Chris drives people and the kind of the culture the Niners have, he could just be absolute monster opposite Nick Bosa.
I think, by the way, that Stewart would be a wonderful pickup for the immediacy because he can set the damn edge. I mean, if there's one thing
there's your edge setter.
He's going to set the edge. So, like, I'm not concerned about. Like, I don't think that he's going to be some scrub. I think that he has a very high floor because what he does at the weight that he was playing at, which I would expect him to go back to, is extremely valuable for a competent winning football team and a defensive line that needs somebody like that. I don't think that you should pay the price that he's likely going to cost, which I think is going to be a late first-round pick, meaning you're going to either have to trade up or trade down from 11 or 43 in order to get him. Like, I don't see a reason to do that when there's a Landon Jackson from Arkansas available who can do a lot of the same things, or Scourton might fall down, or there's a lot of guys who
I loved Landon Jackson today, man. He was awesome, was he not?
I'll tell you this, Larry. Like, I believe in the 3-cone. I believe in a lot of the shuttle stuff. I do not give a flip how fast a defensive end is. The 40-yard dash, like, what does that do for me? I need to see explosion off the line. The 10 seconds.
It's the 10-yard. It's the 10-yard.
I get the 10-yard, but even so, I don't even need it that much because that's such a minute difference, right? Like it's 187 or 17. Like, I need to see broad jump. Broad jump tells me more. That's explosion off the line. And listen, I know that Shamar Stewart has all of these wonderful athletic traits. I didn't see it manifested at A&M to the fullest of their ability. I didn't see them manifested at the Senior Bowl. I haven't seen them yet. And I'm sure, he can absolutely come in and be a bull rusher and be valuable. And maybe he gets NFL level coaching and it goes to another level. Can't dispute it. He is a wonderful piece of clay that if you have a great defensive line coach, you can maybe make something out of him. I'll note this with Chris Kaseric. He's someone who can get guys, ironically, because, Chase Young didn't do this, but he's somebody who can drive guys to have a more competent all-around game and a stronger motor, right? That's what he does. He does very well with like interior pass rushers, guys just burst, explosion, explosion, explosion. They have not really coached up anybody to like add to their bag, the proverbial bag. Like who has gotten better as a pass rusher with like a new move or something under Chris Kaceric's watch? He's more of a motivator than he is maybe a technician. And
I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, because I talked to Sam O. I mean, he definitely felt like now, he also felt like Nick really helped him quite a bit.
Yeah, Nick is effectively the bag.
But
teacher.
I mean, Chris coaches. You're right there. Nick coaches. I mean, he is not just he's not just yelling for the hell of it. He's a cerebral defensive line coach too.
I have no problem with the way he does it. I'm just saying that you're not going to him like a Chip Englund trying to get your shot fixed, right? Like I'm not sure he's the defensive line coach to go and find this ball of clay and turn him.
Look at Evan Anderson, dude. I mean, he took Evan Anderson from an undrafted player.
Like the flip
but
side
Drake's
of that.
Problem's been physical, are they not? I mean, Drake has not been able to.
Look at Robert Beal.
stage.
Robert Beal is a guy who never played at Georgia.
You're right on that one. You're right.
There's a lot of athleticism, and Robert Beal has like done nothing. So
he didn't do anything at Georgia, though. In
correct,
fairness,
right? Yeah. But the idea, okay. So this is the same argument, though. Robert Beal was a 5th-round pick. There was nothing gained, nothing lost. If you're getting Shamar Stewart, okay, you're saying you like the production. Well, the production all came off of one move. And again, you look at what Will Campbell did to him in the LSU game, and he goes, "You only have one move," and he just took his lunch for the rest of the contest. It took a little bit, but once he figured it out, it was over. And
to me, I know exactly what you're saying, but to me, the guy that I guess I would compare him to, I think in a way. There's risk with all these guys, right? Some guys are going to bust because their body's going to break. Some guys are going to bust because they're going to get the money and they're going to freak out and they're going to make bad decisions. There's a bunch of reasons guys fail. And some guys are going to get better and really take off. So, and they're human beings. It's hard to predict.
Of course.
But I would say, Shamar Stewart to me is a very safe pick because to me, he's like a Trayvon Walker. Now, Trayvon Walker, unfortunately, he didn't pick himself, but he went first overall in front of Aiden Hutchinson, and that's a burden to bear. But Trayvon Walker is so big, so strong, so naturally gifted that he's going to have a really nice NFL career. I don't know if he's ever going to be a superstar. I'm pretty sure he's never going to be Aiden Hutchinson, but he's going to be a very solid NFL player because of extreme athleticism. And when you have extreme athleticism, to me, those are the safe guys. Like Vernon Davis coming out of Maryland. Did he have great ball skills? No. But you know what? He's just such an extreme, awesome athlete that he had a really good career. He had one good year. All that. He had one good 13 touchdown year as a receiver, but he was better in other ways. He was really good as an inline blocker, and he was Vernon had a very good career. But I'm just saying he wasn't like the greatest tight end of all time or anything. He was just a solid receiving tight end. I think Shamar Stewart. I don't know if he's ever going to be like he's physically the best. I don't know if he's ever going to actually be the best, but I think he's very safe to be like damn good just because he's so big, so fast, so strong.
I get it.
I'm saying though, he has no real refinement to his game right now.
You saw it at the Senior Bowl,
and the sack production has not been there.
You saw it at the Senior Bowl when they're doing one-on-ones, and that's an opportunity to really try some stuff out because you got a whole
bag of tricks.
You're at an incredible competitive advantage as a defensive lineman, and all he did was just run just face mask first into dudes like 9 times in a row. And it's like, it's really like, this is your moment. And like, you can't bring out a rip move or a spin. Like you can certainly do it. You see the athleticism and you're like, I'm sure that guy could just do a standing front flip if he wanted to, but he doesn't. He just runs straight into their face, which again, I do have to say, you got to appreciate it. I mean, that's a football player right there, but I have like a
He's
third
kind of
round grade.
badass. I mean, he's
I
fun. I'll say
appreciate-
this: I watch
I
A&M a
appreciate the
lot.
power. Yeah,
He's fun to watch.
But-
I know what you're saying though. He's not the most refined guy. But as far as who did you like? Who did you like? Because to me, I'll give you a few that I like today.
Well, I'll give you the guy I like.
Landon Jackson
Loved Landon
at that
Jackson.
size.
Yeah.
And just also, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the guy who I'm looking for the guy who does really well and is still kind of pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's also the guy who didn't do that well that's kind of like, hey, man,
Whatever.
I'm all right. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. Some people have low standards for themselves. So I thought
I
Landon
wouldn't know
Jackson
anything about that.
Landon Jackson, I thought really stood out. I've been touting Ty Robinson, and he ran at 6'5", 288 pounds, 4'8", Dieter, and he is a beast. I mean, we're talking. This guy plays probably another 20 pounds heavier than that. He probably plays like 310.
Yeah.
So he's obviously dropped weight to get to this 4'8",
which is hard to do at his old age.
But this guy is a absolute monster.
Yeah.
Jihad Campbell, John Joyner, Nick Martin. My favorite is Eugene Asante, who I just absolutely love, man. I love this guy as a player, and he ran 4.48, and he was disgusted. He was seriously mad. He looked up, he's like, oh. And I'm wondering what he thinks he can run. I'd love to find out what he thinks he can run. He was 6'3", 223, or 6 feet, 223, and ran 4.48. Loved him. And I'll give you another one I loved is Carson Bruner. The Niners have met with Carson Bruner from the linebacker from UW. He ran 4.58. And you heard Jeremiah just, change his whole tone because Carson Bruner's film was damn good. This kid's really a good player. And now that you know that he's not just a good player, but he's a good athlete, Carson Bruner is going to go.
227.
What's that?
He plays linebacker and he weighs 227 pounds. I mean, it's not viable. It's just not viable. You got to be at least 240 to play linebacker at the NFL level.
Oh, I don't think so anymore, man. I mean, the Niner guys aren't. I mean, I would say that, do you think Flanagan Fowles a converted safety? I think you need speed now.
I mean, I don't disagree that you need speed. The linebackers.
I mean, look at who's the best linebackers in the game. I think they're JOK is monster. JOK weighs 220.
He probably plays at around 230, but he's a small guy. I'm not disputing that. But he's appreciably small. I think you got to be 240, and I don't totally agree with you that you need to be fast. That's the beauty of this. You have to find guys that have the weight and are fast. I was just going through some of the combine numbers from last year, and it's hilarious because the NFL put out a new site this year with their advanced analytics stuff, NFL Pro or whatever, and they had the miles per hour on the 40-yard dash from last year, right? And so Xavier Worthy gets to like 23 miles per hour, and then the second fastest dude was Isaac Garendo. Well, Isaac Garendo weighed 55 pounds more than Xavier Worthy. Like, that matters. Like, it really does. We're talking about basic physics. Mass acceleration equals force. And so I worry about a guy like Carson Bruner, who is 6'1" and weighs 227 pounds and didn't have the best vertical, but did have some really, he can run in the straight line really fast. I'm not sure what that really does. I liked what I saw. I think Teddy Buchanan got himself drafted today. I really liked watching him at Cal.
Cal kid had the 40-inch vertical.
He was a beast. And
he's a good player. Yeah, he was a really good player.
My concern was that he would get, and he has a weight issue too. He checked in at 233. My concern is that he's going to get washed out at the pro level. And that, a lot of linebacker play in the college level, it's kind of man on man. There's not a lot of gang tackling. You don't have to work through a lot of traffic. So that, maybe he would have an issue. But with that kind of athleticism, especially burst, with his play recognition that you saw at Cal, I think that he makes himself a viable day 3 pick and could turn into a pretty nice depth linebacker. The guy that I love, the player that I have fallen in love with in this draft, CJ West, defensive tackle out of Indiana. I cannot get enough of him. Watch the Ohio State tape against Indiana this year. And you can tell when CJ West is not on the field. That is like my new highest compliment. If you're a lineman on either side, and typically you're getting subbed out on defensive line, but if you're a lineman and I can tell the reps that you're not playing, that's way more important than anything else. Like, oh, it really flashed here. No, every time there's a shitty rep from your defense and I look and I don't see your number, that tells me something, because that means the alternate is true. And all this guy did was just make winning play after winning play after winning play. And I was a little bit shocked. I sadly, I think that the way that our schedules have worked out, we already recorded the video and it probably won't come out now. I think by the time that our defensive tackle video, me and Jake's defensive tackle video comes out with our three guys, CJ West is going to be like the new hot name. But when I found him like a week ago, which I'm sure I was, months late compared to the people who do this at a more appreciable and higher rate, I couldn't stop watching him. I loved watching him. And then he tests out of his mind today. He's a little bit lumpy. He's not, you're not putting him number one in the fashion show here, but every rep just win. He is a hell of a football player. And the new formula for me, if I'm just having the idea of what the 49ers should do, I don't think there's a better scenario than getting Walter Nolan and CJ West, and I would prefer that to even getting Mason Graham at number 11. I would rather have Nolan and West on my team than the number one defensive tackle in this class, who we will have a conversation about him some other time, but I don't really get it.
There's a lot of really good defensive linemen. I mean, there's a number of guys that I'd be really excited about going after. I love Walter Nolan as well. He told people this week that he was a big fan of Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, and was a Niner. Somebody, who was it that was wearing? I forget who was telling me that they were wearing a Niner backpack, or maybe it was Shamar Stewart. I think Kev told me that Shamar Stewart met with the Niners and he was walking around afterwards wearing a Niner backpack. That cracked me up.
Where do you even get one of those? NFLshop.com?
I'll tell you. So
I guess these guys got money now.
To me, I mean, Shamar Stewart, I knew was going to test amazingly. The guy Nick Martin, the linebacker who wore the beanie, the Oak State linebacker, he was pretty impressive. I mean, 5'11", 221. That's what I'm saying. A lot of these linebackers are kind of on the small side, 221. I think I like Eugene Asante. I like David Benda. The guy that I was really impressed by today was Demetrius Knight from South Carolina, the linebacker. He looked really, really good. But I'll tell you, there's always going to be a combine guy, right? And to me,
Shamar Stewart.
Well, no, Shamar Stewart. You got to give Shamar Stewart more than that, because Shamar Stewart's a huge talent.
He got
huge talent. I understand he doesn't have huge production, but he is a huge talent, and he is not going to be a bust. So he's not a wuss. Shamar Stewart has just been used poorly. He's just been used poorly. Believe me, I watch all these A&M games. There's times where Shamar Stewart is literally playing harder than the rest of their defense combined. Okay. His motor at times, his passion for football is greater than his production. His production, you look at his athleticism, you look at his lack of sack production, and immediately you would be like, oh, you know what? This guy doesn't want it, whatever. No heart. This guy's got the most heart. This guy's got the most. This guy tries hard in the fourth quarter.
Why? He has all the athleticism. He has all the talent around him. He has all the heart. Why doesn't he produce?
First of all, he does produce. He led the Texas A&M Aggies, a really good defense that has 3 different guys that are going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds of the draft. He led them in pressures. He didn't get home as much because he just didn't get home as much against A&M. Because they have a really good high profile defensive line. Teams got rid of the ball really fast. I mean, guys did not hold the ball very long against A&M. And Scorton is a productive guy. He picked off some of them. And also Shamar Stewart is, as you say, he's raw. He doesn't have tons of moves. I don't think he's gotten the best coaching so far. He hasn't developed a go-to move. He beats everybody with raw talent. but the upside there is immense.
I don't want to be drafting.
Immense.
I don't want to be drafting strictly on upside.
I know,
where
but
he's going to go now.
He's a freakish athlete. I mean, I agree.
It's fun to take those guys in the 3rd round or the 5th round or even the 2nd round.
Where do you expect him to go?
I think he's going to go in the top 20 now.
I expect him probably to go, around 20 and between 20 and 30. And I think that's probably where he should go. I think that's where he's going to go, between 20 and 30. We'll see.
Fair enough.
The guy who I was going to say, though, is not a player who tested out great and looked great in the combine. Okay. Is the Georgia kid, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. So he's 6'4" 3/4, 276 pounds.
Yeah.
And he placed second in the 40 at 4.86, first with the 10-yard split at 1.69, and swept me at 36-inch vertical, 10 feet 4-inch broad jump, 7.28 3-cone, 4.34 in the 20-yard shuttle.
No, he had an absolutely elite day.
Yeah. And,
276 pounds of defensive tackle.
He didn't start until his senior year. His college stats are not that great. This is your combine guy. This is the mistake, I would say. Somebody's going to say, wow.
Here's your Robert Beal.
This is the mistake. This guy figured it out later because he's a great athlete, but he didn't play great.
The other one might be Ty Robinson, the Nebraska kid, because he just you look at all this green on his relative athletic score, and you're like, wow. And then you watch the tape, and you're like, kind of a tryhard, which is great. We're back in Shamar Stewart territory. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, you have all this athleticism, and it never seems to get where it needs to go. And he's like 25 years old on top of that, so that doesn't help. By the way, bad day.
You don't like Ty Robinson? Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher, I thought, were a terrific combo this year. I love Ty Robinson. I think Ty Robinson is going to be fantastic. I love the motor. He plays super hard. That guy's a badass. To me, Ty Robinson is fast and violent.
Yeah, I think he's violent. I don't think he separates from the guys that are blocking him very well, which seems to be kind of the job. Maybe that's bad coaching. I think the world of Matt Rule, so I'm not really wanting to go down that road, but I could be wrong about that. I do want to note that our guy JJ Pegues had a bad day, and that makes me kind of sad.
Well, he not a great tester. He's not a great tester. Some of these defensive tackles are not the kind of shape that they should be in. I mean, he definitely didn't have a very good day. To me, I look at it this way. Who stands out athletically, that's good. And who stands out athletically, that's bad. And that's what you're looking for. The guys at the very top, you're like, whoa, okay, you got to give them theirs. And the guys at the very bottom, you got to be like, oh, okay. And then also, there's also, some guys just don't have the right body type. And it's just, you can tell they're just not going to age well. To me, one guy who just looks terrible out there is Deion Walker, the 300, the Kentucky kid. He's got spindly legs, terrible bad body, avalanche.
Hates him.
Oh,
he says that he's got the worst pad level he's ever seen.
Plays high. Yeah, I mean, he's big, but he's got his body.
Someone's going to love him. He had a good Senior Bowl. Someone's going to like him. Someone's going to convince themselves that they can get those shoulders down, and they're wroong. They're wrong.
But it ain't it. It's not that. It's like his body is. He's
not built for it.
I mean, he's not an athlete. I mean, it's like he's not. He's really got like an avalanche going on at the gut level. I mean, it's bad.
Again, something I also don't know anything about.
It's bad. I mean, he's really, and he's got spindly little calves. I don't know. He didn't look good. To me, the another guy that I was a little worried about today, Princely Umamalian, who looked good running, but there's no vertical there. There's no power in the legs. He can't really anchor. You can kind of see that on the film, and then that kind of his lack of leg strength kind of showed itself today.
You noted
Oladipo, I should say, is the
Yeah.
guy that Tony Pauline says the Niners love and are going to take in the second round if he falls there. What do you
and I get
think?
it.
Is Oladipo going to go in the first round?
I don't think so. He's so raw. Like the beauty of him is that he could be all things, but he is also nothing. And so it is truly in the eye of the beholder, but he's just twitchy. So it should translate a little bit better into some of these combine things. But on the tape, you go like, oh, he really doesn't know what he's doing, but you like the possibilities. It feels close in like a lot of different areas, as opposed to, we're going back to flipping Shamar Stewart. Poor guy's getting raked over the coals here for no good reason, but by me. Like with Shemar, you're like, you'd like to see some more diversity of thought. Whereas with Oladipo, it's like, oh, there's nothing but diversity. He's winging it. He's exploring the space. I would be surprised in this class if with the quality that they have at both tackle and end in this class, it'd be surprising if he was a first rounder. I think he'll be there at 43, and that might be a bit of a stretch, frankly. I mean, he feels like somebody who 50, 60 range, but I have no problem with the Niners pulling the trigger.
Yeah,
there.
To me, he's a third round pick. I think in the 40s that's too high. But if you, I don't think if you wait till the seventh, if you wait till the third round, he probably is not.
He's not there. The Niners last year took Ricky Pearce at the end of the first round. He was probably a mid-second rounder if we're being putting an objective grade on it. They took Renardo Green, a guy who both myself and my man Hutch were very, very high on. We both thought he was a first-round talent. Most people that we talked to laughed at us and thought that he was a third-round talent. We met somewhere in the middle where the Niners picked him at 61. So, if the Niners have their sights set on somebody and they really like a guy, and they really do, when they pick with conviction. They don't dick around and play the ball game of, maybe he'll still be there and this and that. They don't trust themselves.
They want to make sure they get their guy.
Which, you know what? Appreciate the conviction. And they were more about that in 2024 than they were in any other draft. And it worked out well for them. Pick the guy. Who gives a damn what the number is? That for every, Renardo Green
exactly.
and
if you think
Ricky
the guy's
Pearsall,
great,
you get a Moody, but you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I mean, if you think the guy's great and you have the conviction personnel wise,
totally.
Who cares? Nobody's going to sit there and be like, dude, as you're at the Hall of Fame speech. Yeah. Oh, you were a third round pick?
Yeah.
Not a second?
Sporting News gave you a C+ on that pick. It's like, who gives a shit?
But I will say this, Pauline is not like everybody else. If he says they're interested in Oladipo, they're interested
shit out there,
in Oladipo, and I would not be surprised if they like Oladipo and they. Well, if they really like him, supposedly the kids' interviews have been incredible too.
Yeah.
And I could see it. Like when I was watching the Senior Bowl, they showed some of the locker room scenes, and you could see Oladipo just bouncing around the locker room, high energy, really vocal, really. He's going to be one of those guys that gets you ready to play. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a tone setter. And if they're going to say goodbye to Debo and they're going to change their locker room, they're going to have to add some tone-setting type players who play with attitude and energy, and Oladipo does that. He's got, other flaws. I agree, he's raw, but I could see them going for him.
I get it. I got no problem with that. That's a good pick if you have somebody who is more established, right? You can have someone who's raw if you're not asking them to be a 3/4 of down guy, right? If you don't need him to start, where you can, put him behind a Joey Bosa to where, hey, we can just sick him for a year or two while he figures out how to be a professional. He figures out how to fully expand it. Whereas so that is a very dependent on free agency pick. If they don't have somebody in there and maybe they still feel some sort of way about the guys they already have or Floyd, they'd be wrong, but they might feel that way. Then that's a dangerous pick. Then I want someone who has a higher floor, and I don't want to bet on the ceiling, which is prodigiously. I mean, that's a 10 out of 10 ceiling on the UCLA kids. So, it's a great class where you're not having to stretch inherently, right? We're talking about Oladipo as someone who they can take at 43, and even then, we both agree that's probably a little early. Whereas I think in last year's class, well, shit, the first guy off the board at defensive end was his running mate. Well, I guess he was at Cal, but UCLA guy Latu, who had a lot of the same concerns. Like Latu is a good player. He's far more refined and all that, but there's still this sort of just incompleteness and just, oh, he's very twitchy and we'll see what happens at the pro level. And turns out nothing really happened at the pro level, at least in year one. That guy got taken 15th. So scarcity, not an issue in this class if you're looking for a defensive lineman, and the Niners are looking for about 4 of them. So that's a good thing.